All right, so we'll give a couple of minutes for the guests to come in. So I do see a lot of them coming in right now. So maybe just a couple of minutes before we start off. So
they can't hear us yet.
no, I can hear you. Can you hear us?
Yeah.
Perfect. All right, so we still have some people coming in from everywhere. So, but I'll start off maybe. First of all, thank you everybody for joining in. We have some guests from attendees from across the globe right now, from some from US, from UK, India. We have it all over the world. So, so hello everybody, and thank you so much for joining in. On the discussion today, we have two panelists with some huge experience in the field of finance, leading the finance org at large organizations and also some medium organizations as well. Joining me on one side is Brett Hatch, currently the CFO at IT Convergence. Brett has also been formerly a director at Amdocs, which was a subsidiary of AT&T, and it was their cloud support solutions company. Brett is currently the CFO at IT Convergence, and IT Convergence is one of the largest digital transformation and cloud services company right now. On the other side is I have Jay. Jay, if you can just identify yourself. Jay is currently a senior director at Sanmina, and he's been heading the finance operations at India. And Sanmina is a NASDAQ listed company, electronics manufacturer. And Jay has been a Sanmina veteran in some sense, probably 13 years with them, and has been handling various facets of finance. So both Brett and Jay come with tremendous experience in this space, and have been at the forefront of probably leading some digital transformation exercises as well at the organizations as well. So thank you both for joining me in here. I think it's wonderful to have you both here. So
thank you for having us, Kartik.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Let me get to the topic of our discussion, which is what we have done is we've chosen a small piece of the Office of CFO's responsibility matrix in some sense, which is the financial close, probably more on the controllership side. And what we are going to discuss is how corporations have been bringing about more efficiency in the process. And more importantly, I think also has been the latest trend of how GenAI has played a significant role in actually making this huge efficiency that we're talking about. Jay and Brett, maybe over to you guys. I'm sorry, I have not introduced myself. I'm Kartik. I'm the CEO of Consark.ai. We are a finance SaaS organization which is helping companies actually build and implement tools for on financial close, variance analysis, and a few other risk processes per se. Just to get straight to the topic, right now, Jay, Brett, maybe some opening remarks from you guys. Probably let's first start with understanding, the use of technology that you are seeing in the financial close process. Maybe Brett, you can start with the opening remarks, and then Jay, you can add on as well. So.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Kartik. Again, thanks for having us. This is exciting to meet with you and in the forum here to discuss AI and its implications on the financial close. I think in my experience, I've seen an evolution in the technological changes that's been impacting our finance world. I think we've all at some point been impacted by the data migration to the cloud and moving our on-prem financial information to the cloud and going on that journey. From there, we've been able to be exposed to and introduce into our finance ecosystem, advanced analytic tools. Coupled with machine learning, we've been able to drive efficiencies and automations in some of our processes, and helping our business both internally and with our customers grow and be able to be, more efficient. And now we're introducing this, flavor of AI, and I think we're all, kind of wondering, where do I start? How does this impact me? Does it impact me? Should I get started? How much do I get started? Where do I go? And I think, as it relates to the financial close, we all have many stakeholders that we need to satisfy. Of course, our internal stakeholders, our boards, management, shareholders, employees, debt holders. We have our external customers, that we need to, provide information to and service. And all of this, as a finance leaders, it really is incumbent upon us to deliver, consistent, reliable financial information on an increasingly fast basis. So how do we do it? How do we incorporate all of these tools to be able to be cost efficient, yet, quicker to market with the valuable information and insights that we have as a finance department. So hopefully we'll be able to explore some of these topics as we continue on this discussion.
Absolutely, yes. Jai, maybe some more remarks for you.
Yeah, thank you, Karthik, and thank you, Brett. Whatever you said completely resonated with me. We just had a quarter close, so everything that you were saying, a lot of those elements apply to us almost every month. First of all, I must say good evening to you and good morning to Brett, and good morning, good evening to all of you. I'm glad to be here. And in terms of technology and how it influences our role and how it influences month close, I have a very traditional view of it. In fact, the interesting take is, when we, because you posed this question on technology and how it has evolved over the years and how it is impacting month close. If you look at, series of people that we interview, if you had interviewed somebody in, let's say, in the early 2000s, they would have said, I've got an accounting degree or a degree in commerce, and that would have been a main point. When you look at people now, and especially people coming in the late 2010s, they used to put, I know VLOOKUP, I know pivot tables, or knowledge of Oracle, IT savvy. So that itself, you can see that technology has changed the way they look at a potential job. Technology has evolved. Technology has moved from, early pre-IT technology to now we are talking about AI and how it will impact us. And it has also influenced the way we do business, not just the month close. Technology has influenced business or the business decisions that have been made. And it has made a lot of, different business combinations possible. Over the last 20, 30 years, I look at a valuation of a company like, maybe WhatsApp by Facebook. How would you arrive at the value without technology? How would you actually, put a figure to something that is so intangible? So we have moved from a very manual, compiling of different elements of the trial balance and just meeting with accounting standards and auditing standards to give the basic information to shareholders, to the current requirement where we have to provide a ratio analysis, segmental information, various foreign currencies. And that has also been made possible by technology. It has been driven in measure by the different business combinations that have also been made possible by technology. So definitely it's something that is evolving. So everything that actually comes in, we have to, we are always sort of open to it. We are always sort of thinking this is something that we have to deal with next. It's no different from a regulatory law or the rule of law in India, especially the place where I operate from. There are a lot of dynamic sort of changes in laws. There's a union budget coming up in a couple of days. Plus, there are tax laws that keep changing. There are new laws put into place. It's a sort of a period of transition. and we have to deal with a lot of changes every day. And I see Gen AI also as, one additional change that we have to work with and deal with. And we are aware of the benefits it will yield us, and probably looking forward to how it plays out. I'm looking forward to having a great conversation here.
Interesting. All right, perfect. So let me probably, Jay, first to you. I probably pick your brains a bit on, we used to have at least about 10 years ago, when I used to be interacting with some of the CFOs and more as part of Deloitte, I used to hear CFOs talk about closing books and closing their financial statements, probably in a month's time, sometimes 45 days from the close of the month. And I think so from somewhere there, people start talking about weeks, and probably now we are talking about days. And I know there was one company which said, I want to close at the next day morning at the end of the year. So 31st December was their close, and they wanted to publish their results on the 1st of Jan. So we've seen that transition all over. So how do you see this really play out? And given that you're part of NASDAQ, you have regulatory requirements per se. Just trying to understand, how do you see that transition, and what's the kind of efficiency you're seeing to build out? And is technology really playing a role in what you're doing?
So I am part of a team that helps actually the NASDAQ reporting for 10Q and 10K, and there's a global controller who we report to. In addition, in India, we have a very similar stringent reporting requirement to the India counterpart of SEC, the Securities and Exchange Board of India. So there's a quarterly reporting that is a lot of it is driven by reporting deadlines too.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. Earlier, the manual month close process used to take months. In fact, some of it is driven by regulatory deadlines. So getting it to close and getting it subjected to the correct audit. There was a transaction-based approach as well. So that has moved with new tools coming into place. To I can probably give an example here. Inventory valuation, for example, we used to do it in a very traditional method, and with you take the inventory cost, note it down, and you add it up, and you arrive at a average cost. Then it changed to something when you had Excel tools, Excel algorithms. You change to something like you can probably do it with a huge Excel worksheet, and can work on a FIFO method or a LIFO method. And all of this was possible only because of these tools. It would not have been possible manually. So it evolved. And now possibly with AI, we may probably arrive at something where we don't need to do a FIFO or a LIFO to arrive at a generic cost of inventory. We are probably providing the most accurate information, and we are probably going to do a specific identification of each and every inventory item and which product it goes into. I may probably get the most accurate cost of every product that is sold. So in a way, that's the way it has changed. It's changed the nature of the month close, changed the nature of information provided to various stakeholders, whether it's the regulatory authorities or to the shareholder.
How are you seeing organizations like yours really gear up to this whole process?
No, I mean, this is
a lot of tools. Is it bringing in more efficiency processes? What exactly are you seeing there? So
you mean in terms of technology and the adoption of that kind of a technology? Well, it's something that I would like to feel that I would like to be one of the first movers, but there is also a sense of what is actually happening, trying to understand what is actually happening. We are aware generally of the benefits that this kind of a tool will yield, any kind of tool. And again, there too we are spoiled for choice. For example, I mean, this meeting itself, we are having it on Zoom, right? And there are other options that were available, and there are other IT systems that are available that may prohibit Zoom and probably work on a different platform completely. So adopting these tools is no different. You look at, there are options in front of you. You look at the benefits that it will yield in terms of the cost to the company, the generation of more profits, the reduction of time, probably the prevention of fraud, everything that AI sort of seeks to speak to has to be evaluated. And again, there are various tools, and we probably will give it a little bit more time. But yeah, we are obviously going to be adopters of it. I can see the benefit of it straight away
Sure.
in a month close.
And Brett, you've seen, you've been part of a system where regulatorily you probably are constrained from while you were at AT&T, and you had strict deadlines and a lot of things that you had to do, to where you are right now, which is more of a private company, and you have the ability to kind of or flex yourself a bit here and there. How are you seeing this technology really come in, and whether it's in close or anything that you're doing from a financial process standpoint? So just kind of trying to understand what challenges do you see, and what are the kind of technology tools that you are seeing yourself implement? So
Yeah, yeah, it's a good question, and it impacts not only large organizations, public companies with regulatory reporting requirements, but also small to mid-sized private companies that also have that need, but maybe not the necessary regulatory requirements to report on a certain time basis. The need, the urgency of the financial information is critical, and it continues to grow. The pressure to deliver high quality, consistent results on a timely basis. I know I feel it month after month, year after year, to get it done quicker, faster, cheaper, smarter, things like that. And I again, kind of looking at over time how things have changed. And I remember on more complex transactions that require, unique revenue recognition type applications and more, significant brain power to figure out. And when we had to close and we were looking at these more complex rev rec type issues, it took a considerable amount of time, and that lengthened the time to close, thereby making it harder for us to meet our deadlines. What I have found over the years that there have been tools to automate these complex structures, so that we can break it down into manageable bits and bytes, so that over the course of a month or a quarter, while you're executing on a particular contract, let's say, and then there's always changes. Of course, you have to anticipate those, but you can key into your ERP system, the updated data points, and it automatically, calculates where it's going to be, to where, if it finally, or when the contract finally ends, all the revenue has been recognized according to the regulatory requirement, and the time, the manual time that it prior took to do that, it's been removed. And so I've seen a great evolution to help us as financial professionals break down these more complex elements of what we do into more manageable bits and bytes, in a way that technology is now driving the speed to close, which is great. This is something that's definitely been needed, and this is where, for sure, Gen AI is going to play a part. And I think that's what we need to start asking ourselves is, how much do we adopt, how quickly do we adopt, and what types of use cases do we want to jump into in order to take advantage of this technology.
Sure. And in fact,
I actually agree, and I think whatever Brett said, a lot of it, again, it was resonating with me completely. That's even with the current IT setups and the technology that we have challenges. When we work in multinational companies with a global footprint, different locations, there are companies that I'm aware of have a common ERP instance. So when you close, let's say, in the server location, it may not be the actual close for a regulatory reason, for a different regime, or for a different site. So we have to use IT controls to bring that, and it may not always be perfect. So I think AI, I can see immediately that will actually get rid of those kind of procedural hassles of working in, multi-currency, locational, with different regimes, different accounting standards applying to each and every location. That's that kind of a situation, and bringing some consistency and readiness to it.
Interesting. In fact, one of the things that, I mean, what you guys are saying is something that we are seeing from a lot of conversations that we are having with the customers as well. And all at every event that we've been, the one thing that we are hearing is, earlier there used to be large corporations who said, things are complex. Right now, almost every organization are feeling the complexities in terms of the accounting standards, in terms of the various reporting requirements coming in. Still, there is a scale of complexity that changes, but at the end of the day, I think everybody's seeing it, and everybody's trying to implement some kind of technology to actually fasten. The whole idea is also, for what we're hearing, is the CFOs don't want to spend time, and finance teams and CFOs don't want to spend time on routine, mundane stuff. They probably want to give, and the expectation that we are seeing is that you add a lot more value on the business side, and it's not just the routine stuff. So, and I think that's where, as to how do you cut down the amount of time that we spend on close, and probably that's a good segue into where the key part of our topic also is on the Gen AI part. And maybe we come back to saying, how are we seeing Gen AI play a role in close? And Brett, maybe to you first, what do you think? I mean, you are also a social CFO who I know as who you keep meeting many different CFOs from all your colleagues there. How are you seeing this feedback coming in from your ecosystem per se, and even your customers, given that you've implemented Oracle and some other ERPs into your customers as well? How are you seeing AI being the key driver here in terms of the financial close cycles, or even otherwise from a general technology part? How are you seeing AI really impact your company or even your customers, right? At this point of time, if you were to go in slightly more bit into detail and say, hey, these are the few areas that I really want to concentrate on. What do you think?
Yeah, it's a good question, and that's what we're kind of all asking ourselves. Where do we start? I think to be practical, you need to take a pragmatic approach. I mean, Gen AI emergence represents the culmination of two technological breakthroughs. One is these massive large language models, LLMs, and algorithms that can analyze massive amounts of data and text. And the other is the machinery with mammoth computing power, to power all of those algorithms. And so you put these two powerhouses together, what type of use cases as CFOs and as finance leaders should we introduce into our ecosystem? And I think the first thing is, as you kind of contemplate this, is take small use cases, things that are not going to A, break the bank, and B, stretch your department and resources to the point of breaking. I think it makes sense to start off in applications where you are doing more routine processing with which is taking large amounts of time from your staff. And I think those type of data reconciliations, intercompany reconciliations, things like that, where it does take manual work. Maybe that's something that is a use case so you can start off by doing. And while you kind of think about that and bring it into context of how do I implement this my finance department, you have to work really closely, of course, with your IT group, and create an environment where we'll talk about data later, but let's assume we've got data, it's ingested, it's normalized, it's being put through these AI algorithms that you've set up. How can you feel comfortable and confident in that data and trust that data? And that's where I think it's incumbent upon CFOs to make sure that their staffs have opportunities or places to play around with that data in playgrounds where you've, fenced off an area that they can go and experiment and trial and learn and, fail fast type of a approach to see if, if the use case is fitting, the application for their Gen AI. And without this type of testing and these kind of guardrails around it, you're never going to get comfortable. You're not going to feel confident in the data. You're not going to feel comfortable that you're getting an ROI, out of this investment that you're putting in Gen AI. But I think, to kind of summarize here, where do you start? And what I've seen is that, finance leaders are taking kind of these smaller use cases and testing them out and giving their employees the opportunity to do that and seeing if that's being, successful and evaluate that.
Yeah. And in fact, we are seeing something where I think the biggest concern that most finance teams have is there AI which is hallucinating a lot more than what the real data says there. I think that's the key concern that we are seeing, and I think it is about how AI will learn over a period of time and how the language model is built. But I think if you look at how some of the organizations are looking at it, also is that to start with, it's probably more rule-based automation that they're looking at before making it more text and text heavy and stuff like that, where and processing on more unstructured data. I think that this is a learning curve that most organizations are going with. But one thing is very clear: if you don't start, you have to start somewhere. But if you don't start, it's anyway going to be a problem. So
it is. I mean, right now the term is ubiquitous, but it's not. It's not something that we're experiencing every day. But it will soon be in our ERP systems. It's going to be in our word processors. It's already in our Series and Google searches. I mean, it's certainly the terminology is ubiquitous, but the technology and what we see in interface in our finance ecosystems is not there yet, but it's going to be there, like you said. So at some point we need to, pull our head out of the sand and say, what can I do to embrace this? How am I going to embrace it? How is Gen AI going to impact my organization, whether it's big or small? I think some companies such as Amazon have obviously large cap, lots of money, and it's part of what they sell to their customer base, and their internal finance department is taking Gen AI to heart. They have I've read articles about where they're starting on smaller use cases, the more manual automated tasks that they're being able to automate using Gen AI, to more complex use cases of reviewing customer and supplier contracts to see if it matches their internal metrics on what's important in these contracts, so that it streamlines the amount of time that humans actually need to take part to and they're even taking it Gen AI to the point of preventing and detecting fraud in large, vast amounts of data that humans are just not going to catch. It's too much, but their algorithms are able to review and these large data sets to detect and prevent fraud. So I'd say that they're definitely, in these larger companies, are probably on one side to the extreme. The mid-size and smaller companies that I'm working at now, definitely are not at that level, but need to start somewhere. Need to start asking the questions, having those communications with the CIOs, asking around to your peers, what are you guys doing to get started? Looking at your customers, asking them about their use cases, and how you can play a part of that. So it definitely is a continuum, but as you said, Kartik, you need to start somewhere, even if it's just, I need to learn more. I need to go on YouTube. I need to see what the use cases are and what other people are doing to experiment with Gen AI.
And there are questions coming in right now, and we're seeing, I think there are a few questions coming in terms of saying what are the specific use cases. We will come to that as well, in terms of saying how we're seeing specific use cases of Gen AI in the close process. But before we just go into the specific use cases, the one topic that I want to kind of touch upon, and Jay, maybe you can start off, given the guardrails that are required for, I mean, implementing any technology, but when it comes to Gen AI, especially given that you're talking about language models, which are large language models, which are in the public domain in some sense. In fact, there's an interesting quote from OpenAI, which I'll talk about later. But just what are you seeing in terms of the kind of organizations that you come from? What are you seeing in terms of the guardrails that are typically required? And then, Brett, again, the same question to you as well. Maybe a quick response from both of you guys before we kind of get into the use cases as well. So,
Well, see, any decision of of this sort actually goes through a trade-off analysis between benefits and costs, right? I agree with Brett that we should probably use small use cases and probably take it from there. Everybody understands that that there's a fear of missing out. AI is happening, and there should not be any lagging behind with other peers. Actually, even as Brett was speaking, I was just reminded of this old fable of the blind kingdom, and where everybody's blind and the one-eyed man is the king. So with AI, the first mover will always be the king, and the others will follow. The problem is, as I told you earlier, that is, we're spoiled for choice. We don't know which one to choose right now. There is actually what kind of data would be required. How does it pass through through these probably this language algorithms or this database? How is it stored? Who all have access to it? There's a lot of privileged information in a regulated entity. We are heavily regulated in India, as well as because we are a SEC listed entity. There's a lot of regulation on what kind of data is to be shared. A lot of it is privileged information. So that is something that we look at. That's always look at the trade-off between benefits and costs, and also an awareness that we cannot be left behind. There is a lot of known scenarios in which AI can help us, and AI is helping us already in maybe not Gen AI, but AI in probably in a more rudimentary form is already helping us in everyday decision making. And I actually thought predictive AI would be more useful for a month close in terms of analysis, and I am actually eager to understand how Gen AI will actually bring about changes in our month close, the way we look at things, and what kind of decisions will be had from that. Ultimately, the aim is to reduce costs, generate more profits, bring more value to shareholders, but also give a more richer tapestry of information that is shared to the various stakeholders. So that is something that we'll be looking at.
perfect. Yeah.
And I'll just add to that, Kartik, about the guardrails. I mean, I totally agree with what Jay said there. There has to be governance around this. I mean, obviously the financial information is very confidential, and not everyone can have access to that. So there needs to be, as I said, kind of playgrounds, for lack of a sandboxes, for lack of a better term. That's what we generally call. We need a sandbox in the IT world for people to play around and see how things are reacting to different algorithms and things like that. So, but there needs to be a sandbox created for the finance team with some training. So that's also part of this governance model. As Jay mentioned at the beginning, this is a new skill set. There isn't, training out there. It's not being taught in, at least certainly not when I was going to university, but these are things that we're learning kind of on the fly. And I wasn't kidding about YouTube. One of my colleagues, CFO of a large publicly traded company here in Atlanta, regularly directs his employees to YouTube for different trainings on how to utilize Gen AI in coming up with products with, or not products, but coming up with processes around automation and to develop their own types of use cases in their own specific processes that they've got set up. And the training around it is, it's self-training. They're learning, as they go. But the important thing is that they provided a safe, kind of sandbox to play in, with guardrails around that, so nothing's getting in or out that shouldn't be. And before anything is introduced into production, there's heavy amounts of testing, and until all relevant stakeholders are have approved and signed off. But then it become very impactful and adding value to the organization. But these are kind of let's say baby steps along this path to greater acceptance of Gen AI, but there definitely has to be a strong governance model around that to support any type of adoption, not only with Gen AI, but any kind of technology, of course.
And I'll probably move topics because there's also a question around training, and you touched upon it, Brett. There's the specific question of is there any training required for finance professionals to effectively use
definitely AI? Yeah, for sure there's training. I'll tell you, but it's nothing's been, let's say, codified. This is not something that the big four are out there, at least in a uniform way, training customers on how to do it, because we're all still in this kind of learning phase. And so at this point in the progression of where companies are and where kind of industry is and where finance professionals are, we're, like I said, we're just on the starting line. We're in the infancy. And so now's time, as we've talked about, not to rush into it, but also we got to be inquisitive. We got to look around and see, and people are being very innovative on on how to get trained on this, and going to YouTube is a great place to start. There are lots of use cases out there and techniques and training that people are openly sharing, and that's how word is spreading, that I'm finding.
Interesting, because one of the things that we keep, at Consart, when we start developing products, one of the key things that we look at is how much of training is required for each of these, for each individual as they implement these tools. And one of the key metrics that we keep tracking is that we should build the product so much more intuitively that we should reduce the amount of training that's required. And I think Gen AI, in some sense, allows us to do that because it's a lot more easier. I think the question is, there will be some training that is required to go through the flow of how the product works, but I think a lot of the activities are being done, and they're reducing the time. So if you say, is there training required? Yes. The question is it weeks? Is it months? I would say, it probably should be days, and that's the ideal metric that we track to as well. So and that's been one of the things that we've been pretty happy with in terms of where we are as well. So Jay, I don't know if you want to add any comments, but otherwise I would love to move to the next one as well. So
well, I as I told you earlier, I think I can straight away see that Gen AI will help us in a month close, but a lot of this in the past, such projects have failed because of lack of knowledge, or when we moved from a manual based to an Excel based, worksheet based to a ERP based system to this, a lot of it is done on the job, and a lot of people learn on the job. And so that would be the only concern. And I'm grateful to Brett that there's so many videos available on YouTube that we can get trained ourselves. So I'm definitely going to look at all of those now.
Kartik, maybe I could just interject here before, what are you guys doing at Consart to help your, how are you doing it differently, or how are you helping your customers with efficiencies in this financial close process?
I think one of the key things that we've looked at, and something that we are seeing also compared to where the market stands, right? So I think there are enough tools in the close process. The one thing that we have been very keen on is how do we consolidate the various modules and bring in a unified platform in some sense. And then let me give you a quick example. If you go to most tools in the financial close space, you have a task manager which is separate, you have a reconciliations module which is separate, and then you have the automation bots that we call, effectively managing say transaction matching or any of those reconciliation bots that we're talking about. All those are separate modules. I think the key thing that we've tried to do is how do you actually make it more simple for the user, where they're actually saying the task manager and the reconciliation, because half of the tasks are related to reconciliation. So how do you actually make sure that you combine those two in a single module, right? And this goes down to not only just bringing in efficiency in the time and the amount of time that people spend, but also in terms of the cost structures. You're subscribing to different modules at every point of time. So how do you bring down the cost? And I think the unification of this, because it's the same data set that we're referring to, the same, when we integrate into ERPs, we are picking up this data set of any kind of, whether it's the general ledger, whether it's the trial balance or any of these data that we pick up, we have a single source that already gets captured. How do you make sure that it becomes so seamless for an organization to actually implement all of that? And I think that's been the key driver for us in what we're doing. We've also been at the forefront in terms of saying, how do we build in Gen AI into what we're doing? And we have some interesting use cases that we've built up, and we're still building on a few more. And I think it's a long journey for everybody. And we have started for sure, and we've made some good progress. I think the question is how well we are able to take it from there. I'll touch upon those topics as well as we go along in terms of the Gen AI part. But I think the key part in terms of differentiating ourselves with those in the market has been that we're a lot more intuitive, a lot more easy to use. And the idea is, I think, is we are unifying the entire close process into a single tool, so that actually companies can do the entire process much faster and much more efficiently there. That's something I would summarize, and we can probably go into more details as well. So
Good.
All right. So probably as a segue, what I'll do is I'll also touch upon some use cases that we are seeing of Gen AI really come in the financial close, and I see a couple of questions also coming in from there on these specific topics. I think some of the use cases that we are building for, and we are also seeing we are also seeing as use cases that CFOs and finance teams have loved to hear from us. One is specifically on variance automation. As part of the close process, most organizations do their variance analysis. It's a time-consuming process. And sometimes it's as basic as saying, here, listen, when people give explanations, the English on it is not good, to sometimes it's as complicated as saying that, hey, I think they missed the point in terms of why this variance is at all. How do you actually automate that where Gen AI can play a role? And I think we're already auto-flagging variances beyond a particular threshold, right? We're already saying that we're already automating the entire workflow for this process, right? But the question here is, can you actually can the tool drill down into the transaction level and actually give explanations of what the variance is and why the variance is? I think that's the journey that we're seeing as one key part, and where especially mid to large organizations, large enterprises are trying to kind of cut down time they spend on. There are a few others which are in terms of saying when it comes to transaction matching specifically, that we are seeing that early stage it was a lot more rule-based automation. Today, what we are also seeing is can the tool become a lot more intelligent and start looking at saying, hey, there is a pattern that comes in, which is about withholding taxes or foreign forex fluctuations, for example, right? And it captures that pattern and says, hey, this is still a close match. So think of two data sets that do not match, whether it is, say, think of an intercompany reconciliation, for example, which is part of a transaction matching exercise. An intercompany reconciliation, most times you see a variance between the two data sets because there is two ledgers, because you already have a withholding tax difference, or it could be something on forex fluctuation or whatever it is. and how do you actually track that pattern? And then actually can the tool implement and match those automatically? There are a few more that we are seeing, but before I get into that, Brett, just on these two use cases, what do you think is something that what's your expectation if from your side as a CFO? I know we are doing what we are doing, but but to hear your point.
Yeah, I agree. So that's as a finance leader, I do spend a fair amount of time reviewing explanations on variance and looking at the analysis and asking a lot of follow-up questions. And so this is definitely a pain point on kind of financial close because when you're looking at the aggregation of financial data, it all starts at a very detailed level. And if I don't have a good understanding and the right understanding of what's going on at the detail level, when it starts aggregating up, I may have missed something. There's a trend or an anomaly or something that because I got bad intel on at the lowest level or the lower levels, it's not telling the right story that I need to be letting the business leaders know and how it impacts our business. So it's very important that these things are right. And I do see that as an area that while it is, let's say it's happens every month, so it falls under the category of routine, there is an element of complexity there because they're obviously not every variance is going to have the same answer or explanation to it. But I see this as an area where we can apply Gen AI to, if not, machine learning to look at the, past history, 5 years of data, and other variances to learn from and to help predict and generate, responses that are articulate, clear, and make sense. And that's something that not only applies to to variance analysis, but also to intercompany clearing accounts, things like that, where they are definitely needed, but fall more under the category of routine. So I think this is an area definitely of low-hanging fruit for automation by either Gen AI, machine learning, a combination of both.
Jay, and to you, in fact, there's another interesting use case that we are seeing is especially analyzing journal entries and the risk assessment. I know you spoke about controls so one of the key things that you probably will be doing as part of a NASDAQ or SEC requirement or SEBI requirement that you're doing is also assessing risk on journal entries and detecting anomalies in journal entries. And Gen AI, what we have seen is can play a key role in detecting those anomalies. What's your sense of, maybe if you could touch upon that?
So as well. It's no different from what Brett said about evaluating variance analysis. It's no different from that. So all accounting is just a record of actual business conducted. All JVs are a record of business conducted. That's a fair idea of that business. And there are past trends that are available. There are, there is data available. There's knowledge of actual events. There is a definite knowledge of the JVs that go in, right? In a month close, whether it is on a provision or whether it's a write-off or maybe a cut-off, maybe. And all of these, and also the foreign currency differences that you mentioned, because we've had similar situations in the past, and I always look for something which can actually analyze this much quicker and everything that can be expressed in the code in a proper way. And I was wondering, I was trying to figure out a way to get this in Excel, and I was just figuring out all sorts of permutations and combinations. And I think Gen AI sort of presents that kind of a solution to me. So we always look at past trends. We always look at, are there any exception JVs that we are passing this year? Anything that is a sort of a cut or different from the earlier trends. And that we would analyze, we would look into it in much more depth and check for anomalies. So Gen AI would probably help us do that. I can see the benefit immediately on that.
Interesting. And in fact, these are some of the use cases that we have been tracking to and kind of working on to make sure that we bring in more efficiency in the financial close process as well at Consart. Interestingly, there's also a question saying, can GenAI do predictive financial forecasting based on historical trends? And it's been something that we think it's very possible. When we started off with the flux management tool, we said the variance analysis tool, basically, we said that the future of this should be that it should predict. It's something which is very possible. We know that's very possible. But at the same point of time, it's not something that we are working on right now. The question was whether we are working on it, but we are not working on that right now. But that's definitely in something that we are considering in the future, because it's very possible, right? So the use cases that we are talking about right now is slightly more linked to the financial close, and I think there are a lot more use cases that we can work on. There's still so much more that we can do on this space. So
I completely agree. And specifically on predictive AI actually generating future results, or probably a valuation of a business on what it would be 5 years down the line. I think that's very much possible, because the way I look at it, it's possible on a worksheet, depending on the kind of inputs that I feed into it. And I'm only looking at some inputs that are overtly known to me. I believe AI will actually get in much more in depth, will analyze a lot more and give a much more accurate data. Right now, I'm just looking at, let's say, 4 elements that go in, and this is the predictive output I'll get. Whereas I can understand that AI will actually do a much more in-depth analysis of it and give a much more reliable data for future. And yeah, straight away I can say that that's possible.
interesting.
We have, Kartik, we have a customer here in the US, a large home decor customer with retail operations throughout the US. And they came to us and said, would you help us implement some forecasting tool to help us, forecast sales at these stores across the US. So we implemented an advanced analytic tool using machine learning that looked at a 5-year history of the company's own data for each of these stores. And we put in there, along with that historical data, real-time industry data and up-to-date data around interest rates, inflation, unemployment, and even local type of factors weather that may impact, various physical locations of these stores, to help predict. What the company wanted was a 365 forecast, a rolling 365 forecast by day. So each day we generate the next 365 days, and it's a continual evergreen, or kind of a rolling forecast. And it's not 100% accurate, and we've been doing this for a while, and now we're talking with them about implementing some type of AI implications to this very specific forecasting use case. So we haven't done it yet, but we're talking with them about the possibility on how AI can help enrich this forecast process and to deliver better results.
Interesting. That's a pretty interesting thing. So one of the things one of the questions that have come in here is also about, do you see ERPs like Oracle and SAP, and probably Brett, you're much more closer to the Oracle side. Are you seeing them come out with, especially on the financial close side, are you seeing them come out with GenAI models or tools that they can implement?
So Oracle especially, and I'll say this, it's going to be ubiquitous. It will be there on all of them. Oracle, SAP, Workday, it's all going to be there because the people who are spending the most money right now are these technological companies, and they are spending not millions, billions of dollars into this, and they're pouring it into their products. And it's just a matter of time before it'll just be, it won't even be an option. Like right now, you can buy the advanced analytic on Oracle Fusion, the cloud-based ERP system, and it's what we use internally. It's what we sell to our customers. But it's an add-on. Okay, I'm telling you, it's going to be to the point where it's just going to be that's standard. You know, that's not going to be an option. I'm sure it's going to be standard, and it won't take much time before there are AI type things that will be part of your day-to-day ERP system. And so that's why I'm saying we all need to kind of start getting up to speed. Okay, doesn't matter where you are in the continuum. Maybe you've already started something. Maybe you're like the most of us, we're still kind of researching, and at some point we need to definitely spend the time to get up to speed. We don't need to be experts in this stuff, but we do need to help research and decide about what kind of use cases are applicable for our companies to help develop outcomes, and work with our internal functional leaders or CIOs or business leads to see what kind of problems we can help solve on this, and take some accountability and responsibility in finance to help drive this, to be a thought leader and to help this kind of progress in your organization. It can be something that you're not dealing with these large language models. You can do the medium and small, and particularly use your own customer or your own internal company information, and keep it private. You don't necessarily need to share that with the large language models, and keep it internal to your your organization. I think these are definitely some thoughts and things that I'm thinking about and kind of using as my steps as I navigate along my progress and with Gen AI.
And I'll add on to that saying, the one thing that companies need to watch out for is that these large ERPs will come out with AI models for sure. At the same point of time, they're going to be how cost effective are they going to be? And I think somewhere that's the real crux of how companies need to look at how ROIs are built into any of these.
I actually have a question for Brett and you, Karthik. So we moved from manual based system to an Excel based system to a ERP based system, and all of these were considered as big sort of changes, right? Do you see Gen AI as the definitive change or the next big change in a long line of because from whatever we understand, it looks like this is it. This is what it is. Everything sort of then gets simplified. A lot of a lot of tasks are, or a lot of people, a lot of resources spending or time on doing repetitive tasks. All of it sort of goes away. So is this the final change, or maybe one in a long line of changes?
Definitely not the final change, because we don't know what's next, but it's definitely, it'll be on the continuum. It will be the next increment. The things that are optional now will be standard for your ERP implementation, and the advanced analytics, which cost extra now, I think that's going to be part of the package. And Gen AI may be the optional, but then in a couple of years, that's going to be the standard. So I agree. I think it's just a matter of time.
We are probably up on the hour, but there was just one question which I want to probably answer as well. Is, are companies seeing measurable benefits, especially from our customers, on implementing AI tools, and has it seen practically, accounting team seen that practically? I think the one thing that I would say is, just in terms of numbers, what we aim to do and what we've seen, and these are numbers that we've seen from our customers, is we are seeing a 95% increase in accuracy with our tools being implemented, and a 33% time reduction in general. So I think, and the ROI is being anywhere between 3 to 6 months. I think that's the key part of how we've kind of priced it as well. So, but that's something which I just wanted to, given that's a question that's come up, I didn't want to miss about how well we have been doing it. So I thought I should take that up. But I know we are up on the hour. But any final closing comments before we kind of wrap it up? I know there are a few more questions. We're sorry if you're not able to answer all of them. What we will do is we will write back to you guys specifically on some of these. wherever we have not answered it as well. So.
I just, in my closing comment, look, it's a big topic. Companies are spending, billions of dollars to get started and to progress clear to the other end of the spectrum where we haven't spent anything, and somewhere in between. So I think, as I mentioned before, it's time to get up to speed on the topic, find data and resources within your company that you can, and people to talk to about how you can get started. Should you get started? Is it the right time? And if so, how do you do it? And so it's an exciting topic. There's a lot to learn. The cost benefit is also a huge ROI. It's a big conversation point right now, and I will say, that it's unclear. It's unclear. I think I know, Kartik, you're very bullish about it with a strong ROI, but things I've read is it's not so clear cut, and I think time will tell. How successful it will be and how successful we'll be, in implementing Gen AI in finance. But we've got to start. It's clear to me we need to get started on this.
I agree. We need to start. I think everybody agrees on that. But I also want to be a little bit more cautious. Many of these projects also in the past, whenever, either driven by regulatory requirements or, when we are pushed into getting to get these projects implemented in a very short time, many of these projects have failed to, and a lot of it also has to do with probably the old adage of many cooks spoiling the broth, Again, I would like to just mention a poem, old poem of John Godfrey Sachs about an elephant and 6 blind men actually describing a different facet of the elephant, and all of them are partially right and everybody was completely wrong. And I've seen that most of these kind of projects actually fail because of, but I think this is something that is going to be a reality. This is something that is going to be very, very beneficial to a lot of companies. But people need to be properly trained, and we will have to adopt it sooner or later. Yep.
Sure. And just as a closing comment, I would say that, Amazon is investing $14 billion in finance, in AI for finance. And I don't think we need to invest so much. We still can get some benefits, and there's still some ROIs. If they're investing $14 billion, there is something for it. I think all I would say is that we have to start somewhere. I think technology transformation is important. AI is even important, and we just have to head it in the right direction. So, all right. So, thank you so much, Brett, and thank you so much, Jay, for giving your valuable inputs. And I think, especially to the 80+ attendees that we've had on this call, I would say thank you once again for everybody who's attended and given your time. It's our pleasure to host you guys. And thank you so much. Hopefully, we answered some of your questions. Other questions, we'll get back to you guys.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Yep.
Thank you.